like the people who ultimately were in the Dragon Ball Z cast. We found Sean Schimmel, we found Tiffany Vollmer, she was the first Bulma, we found Cynthia Kranz, we found Saley Delgadillo, who played like Dende, we played, and then they started, okay, so we found all these characters, and what they were having to do next was like assign what roles they wanted for people. And because, you know, I was an actor too, and I was already playing Yamcha, I thought I'll submit my auditions too, just for the heck of it. But no one had their name on it, so when we gave it to the producers, they went through and they picked all the people they wanted. And they're like, all right, we want this guy for Vegeta. I go, that's me. They go, all right, guess you're Vegeta. They go, all right, we want this person as Chi-Chi. I'm like, cool. We want this person as Piccolo. I go, actually, that's me as well. They go, looks like you're playing Vegeta and Piccolo. I go, all right. And I don't know to this day, I would love to find out how much of that was weighted in like, Chris is good at mimicking these Canadian voices, and you know, he's the only one with a deep voice that actually can speak a complete sentence, or whether it was, man, we're already paying him a salary. We don't have to pay him anything. If we give him as many voices as we can, then we don't have to pay him anything more, and it saves us all money. So I have I'm gonna suspect that might have been the case. And I don't think they nor I had any clue that it was gonna turn out like that. Like, I don't think I didn't know that I would still be here doing this 15 years later. I thought this was gonna be a year-long job or something like that, but it just never ended. Dragon Ball Z just never stopped. Because once the series stopped, we did redid some of it, and then we did Dragon Ball, and then the video games started rolling out, and then we started redubbing certain things, and then Kai came out, and then it just never, ever ended, and it's still not over with. I've said before in other panels that like Dragon Ball Z is actually like a Dragon Ball Z villain, where you think it's over, and then the smoke clears, and it's standing there all battle damaged, just going, you haven't seen my next transformation. And that's kind of how it rolled out. And so at first I was copying, you know, that was a hard thing. At first I was copying the voices from the Canadian cast. I'm sure all of you who watched Dragon Ball Z on TV remember that terrible day when you ran home from school and you were like, yes, Dragon Ball Z's back on again, I can't wait, turn it on. And like all the voices are changed. You're like, what the heck is wrong with my world? That was us, you're welcome. That happened because they were recording it in Canada originally, and the producers were getting sick of flying to Canada, for one. B, they knew they lived in Texas, and they just wanted to record it in Texas. And C, they were just having a hard time kind of keeping a consistent cast. They'd already gone through 2 or 3 Gokus in Canada because they just could not keep a solid person in that role, whether it just didn't pay enough or it just was too stressful or whatever. They just could not keep their actors on that show. So they brought it to Texas. And that was a tough thing for me to have to copy a voice like Brian Drummond's as Vegeta, or like Scott McNeil's as Piccolo. Those are incredible voices. These dudes are guys that were on all the freaking amazing shows that I watched when I was a kid. I mean, these were dudes that were like on, you know, Transformers and G.I. Joe and you name it. They're still all amazing professional actors. So, yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. And I remember first going to conventions after this, and there'd be a room about the size of yesterday's panel, if you guys were here, like about 10 people. I go, hi, I'm Chris Sabat, I'm in Dragon Ball. Boo. And they go, do you have any questions? Yeah, why'd you guys mess up the music? I go, that was not my decision. We just changed the music because I don't know why. Maybe because the Japanese music, we didn't get anything from the Japanese except for the music track that sounded like this. It was like the noisiest, loudest, terrible. It sounded like it came off like dubbed straight from your grandmother's broken record player. And so they made new music, and that didn't make very many people happy. And then they were like, why'd you change the story? We go, why'd you change the translations? I go, that wasn't my decision, but we just didn't have good translations. The translations we got from Japan were these weird looking, crappy pieces of photocopied paper that were almost in no discernible order, and they would say something like ta 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 ha ha, battle power, ta 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 ta, and so we were just doing our best to kind of figure out what was going on. And they also like, why did you censor it? I'm like, well, because we're putting on TV, and you can't have blood on TV, you can't have people drinking beer on TV. This is in 1999, 2000, 2001, so the people didn't understand the concept of a cartoon that was not for children. There wasn't a tolerance for that yet. Now we all know that animation's for anyone's age, but it was not the case back then. So we worked on Dragon Ball. I did Vegeta. He's this little angry guy with a hemorrhoid problem, and he's somewhat in love with his wife Bulma. He's about this tall in real life, I imagine. And I play Piccolo. He's like way up here, and he chills in icebergs, and he was kind of a demon in Dragon Ball, but he's not in Dragon Ball Z, and he's a very confusing character for me, honestly. And I always joke about this, so I'm sorry if you've heard it before, but I feel like Piccolo's role in the whole movie is to treat Gohan like a puppy. It's just like, Gohan, go! Gohan, stay! Gohan, don't go! Stay, do it now! Like, Gohan need to go outside. And then, of course, there was that original character I played. He was Yamcha, and he's this guy, and he's like really cool in Dragon Ball, and then the more the series goes on, he becomes lamer and lamer, and then by the end of it, like, he's sort of a shell of himself, but I guess if you had a hand through your heart and you kind of went to hell and then were resurrected again, then maybe you'd kind of have a weird outlook on life after that. Especially if your girlfriend ends up like having kids with probably the most evil person you've ever seen. So I don't blame him for being a little bit messed up in the head afterwards. And then throughout the time, like so I played this guy named Raccoon, and he's real stupid, and I realized the more I played him, just the dumber he got by the end. Like, someone actually pointed that out to me. They're like, Raccoon's getting really dumb. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just becoming more and more fun to make him stupider and stupider. And then I played Zarbon in the original Zarbon. Just sounds like homosexual Yamcha, yes. Yeah, I played this cat named Corin, and he had the sacred water, and that was awesome. I played Kami. He ran around with this man named Mr. Popo, and they grabbed the sacred ointment from the big dragon, rubbed it upon their bodies. And then I played Mr. Popo. Mr. Popo does not lie. I've later given some of these roles to other people because some of them I actually got because actors went away or something like that. Like the original actor for Mr. Popo was Christopher Kaysen, or Chris Kaysen, if you've ever met him. Really nice guy. Except he had to leave to go on a tour for some kids show or something like that, and kind of we had to do it, and I was able to mimic it, so they said, Chris, you're Mr. Popo now. I've since given him back that character, by the way. Let's see. So that went on and on and on, and we were working on Dragon Ball. I played other voices too. I played all the dragons, and Gaz, and Mez, and Jace. I didn't play Yajirobe. That was Mike McFarlane, the guy who does Master Roshi. And so Dragon Ball took forever, and I was exhausted by the time we came to the end of it. And they're like, guess what? We got a show called Dragon Ball GT. And I said, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. I want to do anything except for that. Like, I cannot work on that show. I'd also read somewhere that Akira Toriyama had nothing to do with that show, so I thought this would be a good time for me to maybe not work on Dragon Ball GT or Dragon Ball for a while. At that point, I'd already gone to open my own studio called Okratron 5000, and I've been doing that for over 10 years now. But before I opened Okratron, I was still an actor and we did a show right after Dragon Ball. The next show we kind of worked on was, let's see, what would it have been? Yu Hakusho. And I see people out there too. They're just like Yu Hakusho people. And it was a great departure from Dragon Ball to play that character because Kuwabara is just like this kind of, if Vegeta and Piccolo and Yajirobe all had a baby and had a really dumb baby that's what he would be. Like Raccoon's dumb baby. I'm really proud of you, son. Yeah, Raccoon and Vegeta had a baby. That's what it would be. Ew. You're really pretty to me, Vegeta. Why, thank you. You're very strong. Sorry. Does this sound familiar to you? Is this in your version of the manga? Yeah. I knew it.
I totally get it.
Yeah, you get it now. It's all making sense.
It is all making sense.
Yeah. And then I worked on a show called Blue Gender. I don't know how many of you have seen Blue Gender. Wow. Okay, you guys. Yeah, that show was okay. I mean, it was the first. To me, it was the first real anime we worked on. I mean, it's weird to say that because, of course, Dragon Ball Z is iconically anime and Yu Yu Hakusho is iconically anime, but it was the first like kind of sci-fi dark anime of the type that we'd done at Funimation, and it represented a change in the way we even produced the shows. Because I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but we didn't have the Japanese materials for Dragon Ball when we started. We were working off, like, if anyone asked me, like, how inspired were you by the Japanese voices of Dragon Ball, I'd say I wasn't at all. Like, not because they aren't inspiring, it's just we never heard them. The materials didn't come over fast enough from Japan for us to do it, so we had to get our materials from Mexico. I know it sounds weird. It's not like we went to like a farmer's market or something like that, right? How much for the whole series? 25 pesos, okay. But it was the Spanish dub of Dragon Ball had finished their dubs, so we got our materials from them. So if we ever did listen to it, it was all like, it was really funny, and so we didn't have all those original materials, and so I guess it's called Blue Gender was the first show we worked on where Funimation didn't kind of know what to do with it, and they were doing other things, so they kind of said, Chris, just get it done, or whatever you want to do. So that's the first time where I requested the Japanese sound effects, and the Japanese voices, and the Japanese music that we were able to play for the actor as they were listening to it. So they would preview in Japanese, and then we would also let the sound effects and the music be in their ear, so they kind of felt like they were more in the scene. And I think, and we still use those same methods like today. And I'm sure other people were doing this, but it was the first time at Funimation that we ever got to do it that way. And so it was also the first show where I had the actors really try and pay attention to what the Japanese actors were doing and kind of mimic some of their reactions. Because the producers who worked on Dragon Ball had a certain idea that anytime any character turned its head, it had to be a really loud sound, like, you know what I mean? Like really loud, and the Japanese are really good at doing kind of relatively subtle stuff, but you know, they were working on such bad equipment, they couldn't have you do anything too quiet because the microphones were too loud, so they'd have to say, can we get that louder? I'm like, you wouldn't make a sound if you turn your head, I promise. Watch this. Did you hear anything? Like, you don't have to do anything for that. So, anyway. So that happened. And then after that show, everything just kind of went buck wild. I worked on this crazy show. I was so used to playing like tough guys that it was kind of a shock when Justin Cook cast me on this show about a little girl who lives in the woods with a bunch of dudes that can turn into animals called Fruits Basket. Yeah. And I played Ayame in Fruits Basket, which is weird. How many of you guys didn't know I played Ayame in Fruits Basket? And okay, good, yes. Yeah, or you may haven't even seen Fruits Basket. And if you haven't, Fruits Basket is in those like probably top 10 list of kind of must-watch classic anime. It was a really great dub. It has Laura Bailey as the lead, and you know Laura Bailey's name from the voice of every single character in video games right now. Yeah. She's like the female Troy Baker right now. She's on everything. Just as a side note, I know Troy Baker. I know Troy Baker really well. In fact, I was the guy that actually convinced Troy Baker to do some work in anime and video games. We were both at the same studio one time, and we were both working for the same client, cutting these really shady car commercials. I'd say shady because the company they worked for was shady, and the copy that we had to read was shady. Because when there were commercials that were like, right now, Golants and Centras are all half priced. And I go, is that supposed to be half priced or half price? He goes, no, it's half priced. I'm like, why would you say that? He goes, well, they're not half priced, but half of them are priced at a discount. I'm like, oh, that is super lame. And so Troy and I were both reading these commercials. I remember hearing him, he got out of the booth, I'm like, dude, your voice is freaking awesome. Have you ever considered doing any like video games or anime stuff or anything like that? And he goes, oh, no, man, that'd be all right, I guess. So I put him in touch with the guys at Terminal Reality, and he started doing video game work for them. And I put him in touch with Mike McFarland, and Mike McFarland used him on something. It might have been Trinity Blood was his first anime.